105 participants here in the audience. And let's see here. Good evening and welcome. On behalf of the African Heritage Reparation Assembly, I'd like to warmly welcome you to our second community listening session with a very special guest, Congressman Jim McGovern. It's wonderful to have you all here with us tonight. Before we begin, we have to go over some housekeeping items. I'll try to move quickly. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting is being conducted via remote means. Members of the public may access the meeting by Zoom or by telephone. This meeting is being recorded and closed captioning is available. Thanks to AHRA Media, this meeting is also being broadcast on Channel 17 and live streamed on YouTube and Facebook. There will be two parts to tonight's meeting. The first portion of the meeting will include a brief educational program and remarks from the Congressman. The second portion will include a question and answer session with the Congressman and a public hearing. Before we begin the second portion of the meeting, I will share participation instructions. With that, I'd like to introduce the members of the Assembly. Assembly members, if you could please give a wave or somehow let folks know who you are when I say your name, that would be wonderful. Beginning with Heather Hollow-Lord.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you.
Yvonne Mendez.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming.
And Alexis Reed.
Hello, everyone.
And Dr. Irv Rhodes.
Welcome, everyone, and hello.
And Dr. Shabazz, Dr. Amilcar Shabazz.
Yes, I'm here. Free to land, everybody.
And Deborah Bridges. You good, Deborah? Okay. I can't see my screen while I'm reading my notes. So
I said good evening. Hello, everyone.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. I'd also like to recognize and thank state and local leaders who are here with us tonight. Of course, we have our very special guest, United States Congressman Jim McGovern, who will get a fuller introduction shortly. In the audience, we have the Congressman's aide to Hampshire and Franklin counties, Kobe Gardner-Levine, who worked with me to organize the Congressman's participation tonight. So thank you, Kobe. We thank Representative Mindy Dahm and her legislative aide, Lily Stowe-Alkman, who are also here with us tonight. Unfortunately, State Senator Joe Comerford had a last-minute conflict and is unable to be with us here tonight. In the audience, we have several council members who are here to join us tonight. We have two at-large councilors, Andy Steinberg and Alicia Walker. We also have District 1 councilors, Kathy Shane and yours truly. We have District 2 councilor and Town Council President, Lynn Greismer. District 3 councilors, Dorothy Pam and Jennifer Taub. District 4 councilor, Pam Rooney. And District 5 councilor and Vice President, Anna Devlin Gauthier. So thank you to all of the councilors for being here tonight. Just a note that this was not public, this was not posted as a meeting of the council. Council members will be here to listen and there will be no deliberation amongst the council. I would also like to recognize the Assembly's fantastic staff liaisons. I think their cameras may be turned off. The Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Pamela Young, and the Assistant DEI Director, Jennifer Moyston. Town Manager Paul Bockelman hopes to join us during the second half of the meeting. I'm now going to hand it over to Assembly Member Heather Hollow-Lord to open the space for us to be together tonight.
Thank you. Before I read this, I will just say, we who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. This is an invitation to a brave space by Mickey Scott Bay Jones. Together, we will create brave space because there is no such thing as a safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars and we all have caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wished it to be, but it will be our brave space together, and we will work on it side by side. And in this moment of interconnectedness, I leave us with this Thich Nhat Hanh song called No Coming, No Going. No coming, no going, no after, no before. I hold you close to me and I release you to be so free, because I am in you and you are in me, because I am in you and you are in me. Thank you. We are in this together, and I am grateful that you are here.
Thank you, Hala, for so beautifully opening the space for us. I also just got word that Counselor Anika Lopes is also with us, representing District 4. Okay, I thank you to Hala again. The Assembly also felt it was important to share our guiding principles, which we call ropes. These are the principles that we work together within. And I'm not going to read all of the guidelines, but for tonight, I will highlight respect, participation, exploration, and sensitivity. And then moving to our charge here, just to briefly review what the African Heritage Reparation Assembly's mission is. Our mission is to study and develop reparation proposals for people of African heritage in Amherst. To further the goals of the resolution affirming the town of Amherst's commitment to end structural racism and achieve racial equity for Black residents, adopted by the Town Council on December 7th, 2020. A significant part of our charge is to consult with the community through listening sessions like these. This way, we will be able to develop a robust and inclusive reparative justice plan. We're now going to move into a brief educational program before handing things over to Congressman McGovern for some introductory remarks. Tonight, we're going to present the 5 injury areas of slavery. Dr. Shabazz will begin by giving us a brief overview, and Assembly members will review the individual injury areas. So I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Shabazz, and also to let folks know that there are 113 people here with us tonight right now.
Thank you. We offer these 5 injury areas as a point of departure. They do not encompass all aspects of what reparative justice means and can mean, but are critical ones that have been identified historically, that have been identified in international law. And we also bear in mind when people speak of reparations, reparations is an old concept, is an old idea. It's as old as human conflict itself. When groups are in conflict and at the end of or at some cessation of the hostilities, you try to assess the situation and what the harms were to those who were affected in the conflict, and decide to try and repair that. Then we often come to these areas that look at the question of the people themselves who've been harmed, the harm to their sense of dignity, their personal dignity, their stories, their existence as a group of people, whether at a national level or whether at an ethnic level within a nation or at whatever level. you are addressing that in the area of peoplehood, and also effects from as we particularly look at the effects of slavery, from going back to that moment in 1865 when the war ended and efforts should have been made to bring the free people of African descent, that education, health gaps, educational achievement gaps, criminal justice gaps, and the wealth gap were all critical areas that needed to have been faced at that time that were not. But again, as we open our local discussion, things may range beyond these or maybe within these, and we certainly will be listening intently.
Thank you, Dr. Shabazz. So now we're going to move through the 5 injury areas, and I believe we'll be starting with Alexis.
Yes. So just speaking to peoplehood, and it speaks to the destruction of our cultures, the denial of rights to openly express our cultures, the subsequent displacement of peoples from their identities, and identity is tied to land, to language, to religion, to traditions, to their own families, and self-determination as well. It speaks to the endangerment of our histories, whether that's countrywide, knowing about African American history, whether that's communal, how are we preserving the history of the things that people did in our own local spaces, and then also our individual histories. So like, having access to your own family records, for example, is a luxury that so many of us don't have. It also speaks to the destruction of Black spaces, townships, and institutions. And then all of that subsequently also speaks to the suppression of community building. How do we build community amongst each other, and how do we generally we're talking about a loss of community and a loss of self-identity, and how do we identify our community?
Great. So if we could go to the next slide. This is Dr. Irv Rhodes.
One of the things that is really interesting, remarkable, and also illuminating is that all of the data show that lower levels of education attainment has been correlated with negative outcomes for African Americans in the following categories: health outcomes, the lower the educational outcomes, the poorer the health outcomes. The rates of incarceration are directly and positively correlated with education levels. One of the things that's within this rates of incarceration is something that is overlooked throughout the education system, is that jails, prisons, juvenile detention centers are filled with people with undiagnosed or untreated ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity. There was a the Journal of American Medicine demonstrated the disparity between the quality and frequency of the diagnosis of treatment of ADHD in children due to race. Now, this is important because the education system in which we exist has been accused on one level or another level of overdiagnosing within this category for African Americans. But the critical thing is not the diagnosing, but the diagnosis and treatment. Without adequate treatment of ADHD, it goes, if it goes untreated, all kinds of negative behavioral outcomes can be found. in terms of wealth and poverty, again, if one just tells anyone the educational level of an African American, there will be a positive correlation in terms of the amount of wealth and also poverty. And last but not least, the correlation between lack of education and educational attainment in terms of access to home ownership. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Rhodes.
Thank you. First, do no harm is an ethical imperative that has gone horribly wrong. And I would be remiss if I could think in a minute or two, I could expound just even a portion over the 400 plus years, but I will do what I can to address the systemic, systematic, and structural harm in the medical industrial complex. First, there have been numerous experiments and intentional harm on the African heritage people in this country. From the Tuskegee experiment, syphilis of 40 years, Mississippi appendectomy, forced sterilizations, and so many other experiments that we will never know about, we may know about, and then the glorification of certain people of the father of gynecology, J. Marion Sims, who did surgery on Black women without anesthesia that helped advance his career. So yeah, no, let's not do that. Second is unequal access to healthcare and segregation. There's much data about different neighborhoods and sections of the world, but 67, not the world, this country, 67% of predominantly Black neighborhoods by zip code have a shortage of PCPs. So right there in just the very first step, we are having unequal access to. There's also the exclusion of Black folks from medical schools and fields. And in 2018, active doctors were only 5% Black, which is way below, less than half, like way below disproportionately who we represent in this community. There are flawed theories. I say flawed and sinister theories about Black people not feeling pain. In the South, Black people are still to this day given less pain relief after appendectomy, thinking they don't need it. And in 2016, there was a survey, 73% of white medical students still believe that flawed theory that Black people have a higher pain tolerance. And a study in 2018 of over 9,000 notes say Black folks are less likely to believe when they report their symptoms to doctors. So yeah, there's a big problem here. Black mortality rate. Harvard just produced a study that said if the mortality rates of Black Americans were equal to that of white Americans, there would be 8.8 million more Black Americans alive, like almost 9 million more human beings alive on this planet if the medical industrial complex, if health injury was not an issue in this racist country. Okay. So Black mortality rate is 24% higher than the white mortality rate. Black infants have more than twice the infant mortality rate in this country today, 2023, or at least 2022. And in 2019, almost 3,600 Black babies died before their first birthdays. So COVID taught us a lot. It didn't really, most of us knew it, but for other people, it's shown a really big spotlight on the disparities in many of the minoritized communities, but specifically the Black people. May 2020, Black people were 3.57 times more likely to die from COVID than white people. And to bring it back to Amherst, our little local beloved community where we are, there are so many qualitative stories and moments that we will share with you about our experience where we were exposed to harm in and within our local medical professionals. And I'm not targeting them or any of that. It's based on the larger pervasive structural and systemic racism, but it's here, it's present, and it's time for us to do something. Thank you.
Thank you, Hala. And this slide is for Dr. Shabazz.
So from the, within months of the creation of Amherst as a town, as it ceased to be a district of Hadley, Massachusetts, and became its own town. Slavery existed here, and it was under the color of law. There is an ad that was taken out in the Boston Post Boy and Advertiser, March 17, 1760. So that's within months of the creation of Amherst, that identified a individual, quote, Negro man named Pump, who was 26 years of age, fellow of tall stature, judged 6.5 feet high, has been long in the country, can read and write, speaks good English, had on, when he went away, 2 jackets, one of leather, and under all a flannel jacket. Whoever takes up the said runaway will bring him to his said master, shall receive $3 reward and all necessary charges paid by me. Nota bene, all matters of vessels and others are hereby cautioned against harboring, concealing, or carrying off said servant, as they would avoid the penalty of law. So the law was on the side of keeping in bondage, keeping enslaved African heritage people, Black bodies. This is the roots of the criminal justice system. The police enforce this. The courts enforce this kind of law for another 100 years of Amherst history, from 1760 on, 1759, 1760, on down to 1865. This would be the law of the land. Even as the Commonwealth changed, we then still had the Fugitive Slave Act come up that made it necessary for northern states and northern communities like Amherst to send back into slavery under penalty of law any African person. This is the roots of the criminal justice system. And at every level, we begin to see, even after the ending of slavery, we see disparate punishment, disproportionate incarceration rates, disparate kinds of policing and profiling, the imposition of the death penalty. Every one of these bullet points, we see it operating, and from this legacy rooted in slavery all the way up to today. This work that we're proposing here locally is not a detour from reparations. It is the essence of reparations.
Thank you, Dr. Shabazz. And the final injury area is Yvonne Mendez.
Hello, everyone. I'm covering wealth and poverty in the Black community. I will say that this issue deeply affects the Black community over many generations, and that's why it's so important. Some of these topics have already been discussed. These are all issues that are intertwined and have deep and lasting effects on the wealth and poverty in our communities. So limited access to quality education in our communities, often the result of redistricting, racist city planning practices, and town and city politics. There's a huge discrepancy in the quality of education in Black communities versus white communities. The discrimination in the job arena. Often Black job candidates are scrutinized with different requirements than their white counterparts, and often overlooked for promotions once they do get a job. So many families then rely on minimum wage jobs or multiple part-time jobs to support their families. And that, just creates a very difficult situation to amass wealth and to get out of poverty. Discrimination in loans and lending practices. I'm sure there's many of us here who've been harassed during the mortgage process, denied loans, asked to resubmit documents multiple times. I mean, I personally experienced that, the bank continually delaying the process. And I was ready to give up, except that I had a really great attorney who fought for me. So I was able to overcome it, but not many people are. And it's systemic in that area of loans and lending practices. Laws that result in Black incarceration at enormously higher levels than our numbers in the general population. And that affects generations of our families, of our people, multiple generations. Inequities in healthcare that affect the mental and physical abilities of our people, making it difficult to actually have access to resources. And then being denied access to real estate or land as an asset, and also a resource to wealth. What the dynamic is in the relationship is, and the systems that it takes, the knowledge and the information on how to build assets. Often that is denied our people, and often there has to be an ally or some kind of program where we end up or learning from our family members if those folks are able to actually have access to those resources. But often we don't have access to those resources that actually teach all of us how to build assets and develop wealth within with our families.
Thank you, Yvonne. Okay, now we are going to introduce the congressman to make some remarks. We are so honored to have Congressman McGovern here with us tonight. And this is the first time I'm meeting him, but he's the kind of person who is so connected and so engaged with our community that you kind of feel like you do know him. He's also a proud supporter of HR 40, the proposed Commission to Study and Develop Reparation Proposals for African Americans Act. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Congressman McGovern to make some introductory remarks, and then we will have an opportunity to engage and speak with the congressman, ask questions related to our work here. So thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, and I'm happy to be with you and all the members of the council, the panelists, Representative Dome, all those who are tuned in tonight. Greetings from Washington, D.C., where I am right now. And given all that's been going on here, you should be glad you're not here. But I'm happy to be connecting with you virtually. I first want to say a huge thank you to the African Heritage Reparations Assembly for inviting me to participate in this session today. And again, grateful to everybody who's joining in. As the title says, I think it's best for me to do more listening than talking, so I'll keep this brief, and then we can have questions and answers, and we can share thoughts. You know, but the structural and systemic impacts of slavery in this country are undeniable. The disproportionate number of Black people who have experienced housing discrimination, school segregation, health disparities, and mass incarceration is a symptom of this legacy, and we have just heard quite eloquently from the panelists here the evidence that backs all of that up. Generations of Black people have been denied wealth and opportunities, and the consequences and harm to Black families have been severe. This shouldn't be a controversial statement. These are just the facts. This is why, as Michelle mentioned, I'm a co-sponsor of HR 40, which is a bill that will create a federal commission to study and develop reparations proposals for African Americans. Clearly, our federal government needs to catch up with a community like Amherst. Since the first historic hearing on reparations in 2019, HR 40 has only continued to gain support from my colleagues. And while a Republican-led Congress will leave much to be desired, I truly believe that this progress is inevitable. Thankfully, Amherst is ahead of the majority of the nation when it comes to reparations, and I couldn't be prouder of the work that's being done here. These efforts are important for determining how our country might address the harms of slavery and Jim Crow segregation, but they are also necessary for telling the real history of this nation. We have an obligation to teach the story of this country truthfully, even when it's uncomfortable and even when it's ugly. And when we have the opportunity to right those wrongs, the wrongs of the past, we ought to do so. I mean, the bottom line is we can do nothing, or we can do what's right. We can do nothing, or we can do what's fair. We can do nothing, or we can do what's decent. We can do nothing, or we can live up to the high standard of human rights that we all claim that we want to see as a reality. And so I'm in the business of trying to do what's right and trying to do what's fair, to try to do what's decent, and to try to uphold a high standard of human rights. And I'm empowered by the fact that you all are too. So I won't pretend to have all the answers for the most fair and equitable ways that we can rectify these harms. But that's exactly why we need conversations like this. And again, I'm thankful to be here, and I look forward to listening and learning tonight. And with that, I will yield back my time.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you very much. And we are going to now move into the listening portion. I'm going to offer some instructions here. I would like to get a sense from the audience quickly. I know this may seem a little clunky, but to see how many folks might have a question for the congressman. So I'm going to ask you to raise your hand now. And this isn't going to be the time necessarily, I just want to get a quick count here so I can do some calculating on time here. So if you may have a question related to reparations and what the congressman has spoken about, please raise your hand. And also know, and I think that the congressman's very welcoming to questions that may not happen here, but maybe that you could reach out to his office. Okay, excellent. So you can take your hand down now if you had your hand up. And then if you think now that you may want to make a comment during the public hearing, during the listening portion, this could be about the AHRA's work. It could be about the 5 injury areas that you just heard about the experience of living as an African heritage Black person in Amherst. It could also be about something else relevant to our work. If you think you may make a comment, please go ahead and raise your hand now. And there will be an opportunity. You don't have to raise your hand now. So we can take that a little bit more as a flow as we go as well, just to give me a sense. All right. So let's start. We have at least 3 folks who would like to talk to Congressman McGovern and ask a question. So let's start here. Please go ahead and raise your hand again if you would like to ask Congressman McGovern a question. And we will go ahead. Just so you know, we have decided to bring folks into the room so that you can be seen if you would like to be seen. If you wouldn't like to be seen, go ahead and turn your camera off. And I see that we have Assembly Member Dr. Shabazz's hand raised. So let me just check in with Dr. Shabazz.
Yes, very, very happy to ask the congressman. You know, we were very hopeful with the HR 40, as we saw the progress in the House. It made it out of Judiciary Committee. It looked like it could go to the floor, but you know, at some point I accepted the wisdom that maybe it wasn't good timing for then Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, to bring it up for a vote, knowing that it would be dead in the water on the Senate side. I got that. And then, of course, with the recent election, things have flipped. We lost the House, and now but we have a slim majority in the Senate. With that dynamic playing out, some have begun to raise the point, maybe it's time to bypass the whole congressional route and try to see if President Biden would move forward with creating the commission, understanding that this would be only to produce proposals about what federal reparations should be, what it can look like, vet those proposals, and then Congress then would it would come back to Congress to then act upon any proposals whatsoever. But where are we? I was hearing at one point a little while back that President Biden might have been making an announcement to create a commission on reparations to develop reparations proposals with the Martin Luther King holiday. I don't know if that's still a possibility, but where are we at in terms of trying to get President Biden to move forward with the creation of a commission?
Well, as usual, you make incredible sense, and I think you were raising some really important points. I mean, maybe I'm not sure what he's going to say, on Martin Luther King's birthday. I mean, we'll see. He hasn't shared anything with us, but I do think that we ought to have a two-pronged approach. We ought to use this opportunity, even though the House leadership is not particularly sympathetic, to build support for this bill. And to educate people and to have more conversations and to say that this is an issue, and to try to broaden that support. And at the same time, we can also reach out to the president and say, you don't need to wait for us. Congress takes too damn long. You can actually do some things on your own, and maybe this, maybe, and maybe we can get them to do something. So I take your suggestion, and I'll reach out to Congresswoman Jackson Lee to see maybe we can organize the people who support the bill to maybe do an appeal to the president.
Thanks, Congressman.
Yep.
Okay, so from the audience, we have Peter Blood who would like to speak. And this might take just a second so we can bring Peter in. And I do see Peter. Hi, Peter.
There's my screen. Hi, Jim. Good to see you again. So I'm very involved in an interfaith association that has a whole bunch of congregations in Hampshire County that are working together on these issues. And we have a similar association in Franklin County that does the same kind of work. And these congregations made a big difference, I think, in helping to pass the Massachusetts bill to change the flag, which was very important to the Native people of our state. So I'm wondering, what do you think faith congregations and other community groups can do to help increase the possibility of getting HR 40 over the finish line in the coming years? Thanks.
Well, thanks, Peter. Look, I mean, one is that they ought to follow the example of a lot of the faith-based communities in Massachusetts. I mean, they have to make this an issue. This is a moral issue, and our faith-based communities, have large constituencies. Obviously, our faith-based organizations have large constituencies. We need to remind everybody that there is a bill, HR 40, and what it does, and we need to mobilize those people to start calling their members of Congress and members of the United States Senate. But I think this bill, even with the makeup of the House leadership right now, can be a very powerful education tool. And I think we need to think of more creative ways to be able to bring it to the forefront. So we introduce it. People are being asked to go on as co-sponsors, but that doesn't mean, but we can also do community events. I mean, faith-based organizations ought to be doing the exact same thing that we're doing right now, having a discussion about this whole topic. What can be done at the local level, what can be done at the state level, and what can be done at the federal level? What can the president do? What can Congress do? But we need to get the faith community to prioritize this and to talk about it more. Because I think that among some people, even well-intentioned people, there's this feeling like, well, we're talking about something that happened a long time ago, and so there's nothing we can do about it now. I think what people need to understand is, yeah, something happened a long time ago, but the impacts of that continue to present day. I mean, we haven't gone beyond that. We call it something differently today than we did, when slavery was was the reality in this country. But the disparities based on race in this country are stunning. And I don't know who, my number, you mentioned the pandemic. Those disparities became, more and more in our face during the pandemic, but they were always there. And as we start coming out of the pandemic, they still are there. And the challenge is, are we going to fix any of those disparities? Are we going to try to do anything better? Are we going to learn from, the horror of those disparities, or are we going to do nothing? And I really think that this is an opportunity for the faith community to help, really inspire their constituencies and really engage in this topic to make it a more and to prioritize this as an issue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter. Now we have Meg Gage, who would like to ask a question. So we're going to take Meg, and then we have two other questions, and then we're going to move into the listening portion from the community members who are here. So let's see, Meg, welcome. Can you unmute?
Yep. Hi, everybody.
There you are.
Congressman, thank you so much for your tireless service, especially in these hard times. And thanks to everyone on the Assembly. You've somewhat convinced me almost, but my concern about HR 40 is that a commission doesn't necessarily lead to anything happening, and whether we should try to add more teeth to it so that it requires actual remedy. Although you've somewhat convinced me that the public needs education on this, and people who live in other parts of the country aren't perhaps as there as we all are, but it does seem like a commission might not be enough. Thank you.
So look, I get it. And, obviously it's a first step, but hopefully it wouldn't be, an empty gesture. That, I mean, the goal of this is to actually come up with something concrete. But I go back to what I said. I think we need to, be in the face of more of our federal officials to say, we're expecting you to do at least this first step. We need to make sure that everybody in the Massachusetts delegation, for example, is on this bill. We need to, urge our senators to take a lead on this as well. I mean, we have power right in on this call right now to be able to mobilize others just on our own state. But I hear you. I mean, look, I'm not into empty gestures anymore or symbolic gestures. I'm getting too old, and I'm and I'm at the point where I want to get stuff done. I want to see results. I want to be able to say we made a difference. We address this in a way that was appropriate, given the severity of the crimes that took place over the years. So, but I hear you. But I think this is an important first step, and I think the goal would be to get people on this commission who, were interested in figuring out specifics and not just, a general, boy, slavery was bad, and we have, systemic racism in this country, and let's do something about it, and then offer nothing. We need to start fixing things and making things better.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Meg. Okay, we have Kiara Cosby. Let's see. Kiara, sometimes you have to accept being promoted. Okay, there you are. Just took a second to move you over. Perhaps sometimes people get lost in space on the way over, it seems. Okay, let's go to Gary.
I think I'm
I
good
see
now.
Kiara.
Oh, you're
She's
here.
there.
Awesome. Okay, sorry about that.
That's
Welcome.
okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Congressman, for being here. I also want to thank you so much for your support of HR 40. And my question to you is, so when HR 40 was originally introduced, the term African American was used and understood to be an ethnic identifier for Black Americans who were descendants of slavery in America. Whereas in 2023, it's used more so as a racial aggregate term that is not specific to descendants. My question to you is, would you support HR 40 being the provisions of HR 40 being for descendants of chattel slavery, Black Americans who are descendants of chattel slavery in America? And would you also support one of those provisions being direct cash payments to descendants? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, on the direct cash payments, I would support that personally. and I think we'd have to figure out, I mean, again, that part of this commission would be to recommend, what are the appropriate steps forward, but the reality is, I think as was made clear at the opening of this presentation, we need to be focused on systemic change, right? I mean, it's not just about one payment, and that may be part of it. But I mean, we have to fix our systems, whether it's our health systems or education systems, our law enforcement systems, whatever. I mean, we part of this has to be about systemic change. And on the first part of your question, I'm not sure I got all of that, but I mean, I would take my marching orders from those of you in my community who have been focused on this, for some time. And quite frankly, I think, what you have done already in Amherst is really, quite incredible. So, I mean, we need programs, and we need vouchers, and we need, long lasting resources. I mean, to me, that is a more appropriate kind of approach to kind of dealing with all of this. But I mean, again, I'm not here to tell you that, it should be this or that or whatever, but it just seems to me that we need to look at this more holistically and more systemically, and not just kind of a one-off, whatever that might be. But I'm not, one of the reasons why I want this commission, and one of the reasons why I appreciate what you are all doing, is that, I'm hoping that, people who are focused on this a lot more intensely right now, and whether it's you or a commission, we'll figure this out and say, here's the plan, here's what we should do, this is what we think is appropriate. And, and I would support whatever people thought was the appropriate way to respond. So, it could be one thing, it could be a number of things, but boy, I really do think this is an opportunity to address the systemic challenges, that we face in so many sectors in this country.
Thank you, Chiara. I'm going to take one more question here, Congressman, from Gary Tartakov, and then I'm going to open it up so that we can see what if there are just other general comments that folks would like to make, share experience, and this goes for the Assembly members as well. So I think we're bringing Gary over. There you are, Gary. Yep.
Thank you. My question is a little bit like the last one. I'm wondering, I'd like to hear more about what we might think of as appropriate for reparations, and the difference between what we'd want on a federal level, what would be more appropriate on a state level, and what is more appropriate for a town like Amherst. I mean, I think there'd be different things, or do they need to be different things?
Well, I mean, they can be different. I mean, I think that's kind of the thought of this commission is, I mean, what is the appropriate response, and how do you gain, how do you get, the national support, to actually, accept these recommendations. But I mean, housing vouchers, youth programs, financial literacy classes, there could be, outright cash payments to certain individuals. I mean, if I remember correctly, the reparations to Japanese Americans who are in internment camps, I think, was a cash payment to individuals. I mean, there are examples that we can look at and that we can learn from, but as we were beginning here and people were going through the various issues, I mean, it seems to me that if we don't also include systemic change, we're missing an opportunity here to truly try to, you can never right the wrong, but to try to address the terrible our terrible past in a way that is that is appropriate. But again, that to me, that's why we need a commission to determine the needs of our communities, to determine what the appropriate responses are, because you don't want to leave it to me or one politician or one senator or one counselor or one. I mean, this is this has to be a, you know, this has to be, you know, a thoughtful process that reflects the participation of a very diverse you know, group of people participating in it, and it shouldn't be me, you know, a white politician, you know, from Worcester who happens to represent Amherst. You know, what you should be getting from me is, you know, will you support efforts to get us to a, you know, to a remedy here, and once that remedy is identified, will you support the implementation? And the answer to that is yes.
All right.
So that's the way I'm approaching this. It's like you know, I got a lot of ideas, right? But they may not be good ideas, or they might be the right ideas, you know. And I think we have to, you know, for the politicians, it has to be. It can't be you just to come up one day and say, "Here's my list of 5 things to do." We need a more thoughtful process that addresses this, you know, with the seriousness that it needs to be addressed.
And that is just a wonderful segue for us to begin opening up to this community conversation. We're so grateful that you do represent us, Congressman McGovern, and thank you. We are now going to open this up so that we can, if we look back at our charge, and I'm not gonna ask that we share screen again, but I'll just share with you that we are charged with developing a plan that will be recommended to the Amherst Town Council. And the way we do that is together. And so that's what this listening session is about, is an opportunity for our community to come together and to talk about what a robust and inclusive reparative justice plan would look like. And so we ask members of the audience now, and I would like us to focus first on Amherst residents and stakeholders who are in the audience. So if your hand is raised now and you are not an Amherst resident or stakeholder, please do lower your hand, but we will come back if there is time. So if you are an Amherst resident and or stakeholder and you would like to make a comment, again, this is an invitation to help inform us as assembly members in our discussions and in the creation and the development of this reparative justice plan. Before we take, just please feel free to go ahead and raise your hand now, but I also want to just ask any assembly members before we move into listening, if anyone would like to add to anything that I've said at this moment in terms of, yes, Dr. Rhodes, please.
I guess what I want to do is a plea to the audience that we really need your input. It is important for us to hear from you. No comment is out of bounds. We really, really need your input. We need your participation. And so I'm hopeful that we have a robust participation this evening.
Would any other assembly members like to add to that? Okay. So let's begin with our first hand. And I will, please, if you have called in and you would like to speak and raise your hand, you can use the *9 function, and we'll be able to bring you in. So our first person is going to come over now, Emmanuel. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. So yes, very quickly, I guess I was wondering, how do you see these local and state efforts come together to inform the national effort, and is there any working between those two silos?
Would any assembly member like to speak to that? Yes, Dr. Shabazz.
I just would like to raise one observation. Within the one of our local products of our high school and longtime resident, once a resident here is Dr. Sandy Darity. And, Sandy makes the point that I was just recently listening to his TEDx talk, but he was saying how, in order to move with the identity criterion as well as the lineage criterion, it's going to be like this boon to genealogists. And then he recommends maybe we ought to go ahead and create an agency that is a public body that would give the genealogical assistance for helping to create that registry of freed people, the Freed People Registry, okay? Because otherwise, what are people going to have to do? Are they going to have to go and hire a genealogist to then bring their records to the federal government to say, I am a qualifying person in terms of having descended from an ancestor who was enslaved in the United States? To me, that's the wrong way to go. And so if we agree that we need a public registry and then the federal government could go ahead and begin that now to help establish the lineage and the ancestry that was robbed from us due to the institution of slavery in the United States. So that to me would be one step we could go ahead and begin to take that would then begin to create the registry of African Americans that are entitled. And I'd like to suggest Little Amherst could be the immediate test case for our 1,000, 1,400, however many kind of local year-round residents who declare Amherst as their residents who are Black, of African American heritage. Let's get the registry going right here with the genealogical help funded. So I don't know if there's any loose ARPA funds, Congressman, or state legislators, but in terms of federal, state coordinating with our local efforts, yes, give us the money. Let's have a local agency set up here, deriving the help of the DNA testing center companies, deriving help from qualified genealogists, and go ahead and reconstruct the records right here on our 1,000 or so African residents that can show those of us that have ancestors that were enslaved in the United States. We could be the test case for that right now.
Thank you, Emmanuel, and thank you, Dr. Shabazz. And thanks for joining us. And our next person who would like to speak is Ash Hartwell. And Ash is coming over. Welcome, Ash. We can't hear you right now.
Okay, hold on. Oh, I see.
Go.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah. There's so much to discuss about this, but I was very struck by Dr. Rhodes' observations about the incredible importance of education, and particularly early education. And I like to think that reparations is addressing our present and future as much as looking to the past. And I feel that just one element of whatever comes up that is something that could be done locally is to look at ways of addressing how systemic racism has affected the education opportunity for early childhood and for opportunities beyond. And that a program of support for early childhood education would be enormously valuable. There are many cases in this country and in the world that show but really focus on those first 5 years of life and helping families provide a really quality education can make an enormous difference long term. Okay, it's not a quick fix, but I'm also taken by the idea that that the reparations isn't a one-shot thing. It's going to go on for years if it goes on well. And I'm a white guy, but I've devoted my life to education, and I feel that this I want to put this plug in to think very deeply and carefully about how that might happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ash, for being here. I want to let folks know that the congressman has to leave at about 7:45. So in case somebody is speaking, we thank you again for being here. It was really wonderful to have you and so appreciate your support. I'm waiting for Kobe to send me his office number. Kobe is our Franklin, Hampshire aide that works with the congressman. So when I have that, I'll announce that phone number so that if you have follow up with the congressman, I have it now. It's 413-341-8700, and we'll do our best to get that on a slide before the end of the night. So thank you very much again. And we have J. Smith Crooks coming in.
I'm unmuted.
Yes, you are.
Good. I'm first of all, thank you very much for organizing all of the members of the organizing or steering committee. Thank you very much for organizing this. I'd like to begin by, and thank you, Representative McGovern. I have seen and experienced your impact under other circumstances when food, bread for the world. And I went there and supposed to be advocating, and they said, you don't have to worry about Massachusetts because McGovern's already on board. So I look forward to that happening in this case as well. In adding to Dr. Amilcar's suggestion about bringing in the DNA measures for the legacies and descendants, I would like to make sure that Black people be part of that work that's being done, not just bringing people from the outside to, as the saying goes, to capitalize off of our needs, but to include us at a very very close and embryonic almost stage of doing this. The other piece I'd like to add is the importance. I know that early childhood education is important, but one of the things that has been very evident for some time now is that of mentoring, career mentoring for Black young people. When we talk about wealth, which is important, but for many of us, we have to get to the point of maintenance, being able to build in sustainability at the maintenance level. And that has to be incorporated at some point in time, because wealth tends to be something far off when there has not been an inheritance of it. And we can't get there from here without taking those steps. I also wanted to ask if there is a time frame in mind for the various stages that will be going through to get to the point of having ironclad resolutions, getting past that commission, which in politics whether they be at the local level, the state, or whatever. Things get lost in commissions, and there's a tendency for there to be a socially genetic loss of memory. And so building some criteria for the various places that we envision ourselves being to get to where we want to be. I think I'll let that settle for now. The wealth and poverty place, I don't think I can emphasize enough the importance of looking at economic sustainability, building economic sustainability into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It looks like Jennifer has brought in Isolda. Let me just see here. Isolda, can you hear us? There you are.
Good evening. Thank you so much to all of you for your compelling presentations, and thank you to Representative McGovern. I'm sorry I can't be on camera, but I wanted to follow up on the important theme of education. You've brought up so many themes, and they're all interwoven and all important. And I will say, as a Latina, that it is imperative on all communities to support reparations as the first step towards lasting justice for all people in the United States. And we should talk more about how there's no contradiction there, but rather a building together. In terms of the education issue, beginning with early childhood, completely agree. I do think that in Amherst, being as we are at the heart of some of the most prestigious institutions of higher education in the nation, we are in a very good position to talk about audits. And perhaps there's a more positive word, we could say showcasing the progress or lack thereof in the enrollment and graduation of African American students, staff, and faculty at every area institution, be it private or public. The reason why be it private or public is because every institution is, as a nonprofit entity, educational entity, having tax benefits and all of the benefits of state and federal programming. Very recently, the TRIO programs, the last remaining TRIO program in Western Mass, Upward Bound, which came through Greenfield Community College and Northfield Mount Hermon, has been lost. The Upward Bound of Holyoke Community College was lost a while ago. The one that's closer to our students in this region, Greenfield Community College, was recently lost. And Upward Bound is a program that benefited thousands of students with access to higher ed exposure and visits and the famous summer programs. So that's just one example where I think, we, on the one hand, enjoy this incredible intellectual wealth represented on this commission and in other places from the academic institutions. I do think that as taxpayers, as community members, as parents, as workers, as people who care about education, it is high time and past time to ask about specific progress of African American students at all of our area institutions, and to take that nationally, but beyond where we are, where we've come from, what is the, what were the numbers, what are the numbers, and where are we going, and what is the plan? And that's a very specific place where additional funding could go. Thank you so much for all of your work.
Thank you, Isolda. Welcome, Kathleen.
Yes, hello. I'm Kathleen Anderson, longtime resident of Amherst. And I am excited that the town of Amherst has moved forward on a reparations fund. I'm a female co-chair of the New England chapter of in
Kathleen, I think you muted yourself.
Okay.
There.
All right, I'm unmuted now, I think. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. So I'm the female co-chair of the New England chapter of the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, and have participated with a group of people in Evanston, Illinois, the first community in the country to grant reparations fund for its community members. We've talked about the various injury areas and reparations, from my opinion. Reparations should cover each one of those injury areas. And I believe that the reparations should be regular, ongoing for the next 400 years. And as part of mentioned, and McGovern mentioned that his thinking that a one and done in terms of payment, cash out payment, is not suitable. I agree with that. And that I also believe education around financial wealth and how to manage that wealth, and how to support the wealth through generations. I think we need to be thinking about our great-grandchildren's great-grandchildren in terms of reparations, and that's a way to lend supporting effort to the Black community. As part of the NCOBRA group, I'm working with educational group, a smaller group that is working on that with ancestry.com and collecting our ancestral records. It's quite a tedious task, and it does take time. So if there's an organization that can do that for a group of people, that would be wonderful. What else was I going to say? Well, I guess that's it for now. I do think that reparations needs to be ongoing. It needs to be ongoing for, like I said, at least 400 years. That's what we have been experiencing and dealing with as Black Americans, historical Black Americans. And I use the term historical Black Americans to describe the descendants of the survivors of the transatlantic slave trade into the United States. So that's all I'm going to say for right now, but I can come back.
Thank you, Kathleen, and I hope you'll be back to offer us a poetry reading like we talked about toward the end.
I have it here on my lap.
All right, great. All right, welcome. Can you hear us, Lisa?
Yes, can you hear me? This is John.
Oh, hey, hi, John. Nice. Okay, great. We can hear you.
Great. Thank you so much for your leadership. All of you who are on this commission, we appreciate so much the important discussion we're having here tonight, but also your leadership on this commission overall. My question is really around to what extent this body is going to use any of the findings that the California Commission has developed and put forward. I believe they've met for over a year and have developed a pretty comprehensive report with findings and recommendations. They were established by the governor, and I just wonder if that's already being implemented and used by this commission. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And would any of the assembly members like to speak to that? I know that Dr. Shabazz has been following California. I'm not sure if others have. Would anyone like to speak to that at this moment? All right. Well, I will simply say that we are watching all of the municipal and state efforts that are occurring very closely. It's a benefit it's a wonderful thing to be second in the nation as a municipality to do this. And we don't have the benefit of a whole lot of other information from other communities, but what we do have, we are looking closely at. Okay, and we have Gary, who is coming in next. Gary Tartikoff. Welcome back, Gary. Gary, I think you have to unmute. See.
Okay.
There we go.
And it's not Gary who's
No,
on.
it's not.
Carly.
Hi, Carly.
Hi. Obviously you can hear me. I'm a long-term resident of
Can you give me a thumbs up, Assembly, if you're having a hard time hearing? Can't hear. Okay. Carly, we're having some trouble hearing you at the moment, but we're gonna,
Hi,
there you go.
here I am. Okay. I'll just say what I have to say pretty fast. I'm a long-term resident of Amherst. Came here in 68, left for a few years and have returned. I'm so happy to see what you're doing here in Amherst. But what I wanted to say was that the people who can tell you what you want to hear, what they want, are the people who are most affected and have been harmed, and have inherited the legacy of racism and slavery. So if you have been identified, if you are known to be an African American or African or a person of African descent, then you have not only inherited that legacy, but that legacy is affecting us or affecting you at this moment. And unless we change the systems in place that have created the inequities that we face, nothing is going to change. So I'm not so sure that in fact, I know I don't lean on the side of the blood quantum that we have. I'm much more interested in examining the things that are hurting us and changing those things so that we can, all people can have a better life. I'm not sure that's completely clear. And I don't think anyone so far has addressed that. Have you? Or do you want to?
I think Carly's asking the Assembly.
Oh, okay, I am. Anyway, somebody.
Can you repeat the question?
Pardon me?
Can you repeat it, the question?
Oh, I don't. I'm just saying that I would like us to concentrate on hearing the voices of those who have been harmed. And then understand that the legacy of racism, of slavery, is just as important to know about.
I'd like to talk to that a bit, and it's good to see you, Carly. I haven't seen you.
Hi, it's great to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. I guess I know we've had many conversations in committee meetings about actually getting at the information that we need.
Right.
And so that's what we continually, it's a continual process of how do we reach the folks we need to reach?
Right.
How do we get the word out? How do we get back the information, and how do we analyze that information once we receive it? So I know we're in the process of developing a survey, and
Yes.
relying on folks like you and people who are in this meeting to help spread that survey far and wide, so that we can actually get it to the folks who have been harmed, to the people who are active and wanting to see this be successful, and so that we can get all that information back and have it make a difference in how Amherst moves forward with reparations. So I'm glad you brought it up, because this is one listening session. There was one before this that was very successful. But you make a good point. The folks on the committee have to share and reach out, but community members need to be active.
Yes.
And folks who
Absolutely.
come to these meetings and understand that they're just not, I'm charging the folks who are in this session to stay informed, and once the survey and other information comes up, to help distribute it, because it's only by our communities are a word of mouth. Folks are sometimes wary of dealing with stuff from the town or from some municipality, but our job as a committee is to get to folks, make sure that they know. That's one of the reasons of this session, is to make sure that folks know, no, it's not just some committee of the town, that we're really active and really actively looking to get the right voices and to raise voices and to make a change, make a difference.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Great to see you, Carly.
Thank you, Carly.
Okay, and just a reminder, so right now we're taking comments from Amherst residents. And so we have a couple folks with their hands raised. Let's see. Jennifer, we can move the next person in now. Milan is, I think, Milan. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing. Oh, okay, we're gonna go to Sue and then we're gonna come back. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having this program and for giving me a chance to just say something briefly. And that is, I would be very much not in favor of anyone being excluded from access to benefits because they did not have a DNA traceable link. I think so many families were annihilated throughout the process of slavery and lynchings. And, to this day, not everyone can clearly trace where they have come from. And if we're, sorry about the puppy, if we're looking to identify people that have been harmed, I think having a reservoir of information so that people can be contacted, but to make sure that we're not excluding anyone who has not been able to meet that standard. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, Sue. Thanks for joining us. And I see Dr. Shabazz. You're muted. There you go.
Just quick answer feedback to that. Couldn't agree with you more, Dr. Lowry. So we have discussed the kind of three criteria model that is active out there from California to Providence to all over, and that is lineage, residency, and identity. And the lineage one, of course, California adopted it. And that has to do with proof of an ancestor who was enslaved. What we have said, though, or document that we've discussed, is that to understand all three of those criteria have their validity, and but that we want an inclusionary framework that can, yes, look at targeted remedies, targeted efforts across the spectrum. So yes, for those that are identifiable, that we do have proof, if we could build this registry of those who are descendant of the freed people, then great. Those that cannot but live here, we still are inclusionary to think about efforts that would also benefit other African Americans or Blacks or people of African descent who don't have the proof of ancestry or in terms of the lineage, the identity, and of course we still haven't figured out too many. We still think there even are some things that even if you aren't resident of Amherst any longer, you might still find beneficial to you, even though you live somewhere else. So we think of an inclusionary model that can look at an array of ideas, of proposals, and not be restrictive toward any with thinking about the benefits that could accrue.
Thanks, Dr. Shabazz. Hala.
Yes, and I want to say thank you, Dr. Lowry, for what I heard you say was from the heart and inclusive of our community. But I know even within like the African heritage community, there's tension and contentiousness around it. And I just want to also specifically say that inclusivity, at least in my mind's eye, does not include, not to say it, but like white people or the colonizer descendants who quote unquote owned humans. And that's not in the spirit of what you were saying at all. But I know another city near us has just passed is like, well, white people can get it too. And I know like England paid reparations to former slave owners until 2015. I'm not as versed in this history as to how we repaired or paid former owners of enslaved people, but I know in Haiti and in our country, we have done it as well. So I just want to be clear, we're not specifically talking or including, in my mind's eye, including people who lost income because they couldn't have free labor. And Dr. Lowry, I know that's not at all what you were saying. I'm just taking it a step further because I heard you saying, but I want people that are still being harmed included and or at least that's what I post. So I thank you for that. And I'm taking a step further saying, and my intention on this committee is not to include people that aren't currently harmed necessarily. No, not necessarily. Yeah. Aren't currently harmed by structural racism and or have been paid reparations generations back. Because Harvard just said, $840,000 per household is the wealth gap difference between white and Black families. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue and Hala, and Yvonne and Alexis. Yvonne.
Just quickly adding to that, because I do think that it's an important part of what we're doing regarding defining requirements or, and I will say that, it is a touchy situation even in the African-American and the Black community. And I will say that the federal government has not stepped up. I know someone else mentioned this before, as far as the whole idea of what reparations should be is not at a federal level. And so now everything is dependent upon, and for us being the special ones, also with Illinois, the two municipalities so far who have embraced this topic of reparations. So I feel, and I know, I had mentioned at the last meeting, we might want to have a little bit broader conversation about this. It is specific and customized to our own community. I mean, many of us have lived here. My heritage is from the Caribbean, but my children went to Amherst High School and grew up in Amherst and experienced certain things in this area where I would say, yes, they should be eligible for some kind of benefit from reparations. And I can't see why not. I think that it's about us defining for ourselves and for our own community what it looks like. And I do agree with Hala that, of course, the slave owners, I disagree, should be eligible for it because it is about, about reparations and specific to people of color and specifically to Black communities.
Thank you, Yvonne. I'm gonna go to Alexis and then we're gonna go to you, Milan. Alexis?
Sorry, I'm gonna be really fast. I guess the one piece that kind of sticks out to me that maybe everybody's thinking about, but we just haven't said out loud, is like these days, and maybe it's not new at all to these days, but we have the reason why I feel like it's important that we do have this some sort of validity, which I think that what Dr. Shabazz brought up is really important, is who, the state or whatever municipality funding our ability to be able to access our genealogy or to access our historical records, to be able to access those sort of things. Is like, we do have people, we have the Rachel Dolezals, we have the Jessica Cruz, we have Mindy Kaling's brother, I don't know his name, but we have folks who are claiming African heritage, who don't have probably any Black folks in their ancestry, but or maybe they do, that is so far ahead, but they've been, their parents, both of their parents are white, and both of their parents are white, and et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that, I guess, a very important piece is being able to legitimize someone's actual history to a certain extent.
Thanks, Alexis. Okay. Milan, please help me did I pronounce that right? Or if you would like to introduce yourself, please. And you are muted.
Hi there. Can you hear
Hi.
me?
Yes, very
Okay.
good.
Yeah, my name is Milan, just like the city, pronounce it the same way. I am originally not an Amherst resident. I'm from California. I lived in Texas as well. I came here as a student at UMass, and after graduating, I've made Amherst my home. Listening to the discussion, it is very inspiring, but part of my concerns is, how is it as a resident to know that it's not performative? I mean, because ironically, we live in a town called Amherst, and it's named after this genocidal British officer who gave smallpox blankets with the intention of wiping people out. Me having lived in the South, I've heard plenty of people talk about how things are in the South, the level of racism and whatnot. But in my experience, I've experienced the highest level of racism here in New England. And I think a big part of what the New England identity is based off of is attempting to separate themselves from that racist heritage. And there's sundown towns and even racist slavery here itself. And it's kind of difficult to actually listen to this and not expect it to be another performative gesture. So so the questions that I do have is, how do we make sure that this isn't another attempt at non-decision making, where we give people, feeling that they might have a little bit of power, but at the end of the day, you balance the scales against them in order to take away that power just as quickly as you gave it. Also, this town is more expensive than even the white residents who may have been here can afford. What things can be in place to where the residents of this town can actually afford to stay in this town in spite of reparations and whatnot. The price of living here has gone up insanely quickly in a very short period of time. And as well as that, the question was also how to get the word out about what we're doing here. In my experience, there's been a divide. There's a divide in this town. You have the haves and you have the have-nots. And the have-nots are very obvious. You go down Pleasant Street and you can see all the have-nots standing outside. How can you incorporate that group of people who may not even have access to internet or even have access to a computer to even join this meeting that we're having now? A good start could be maybe putting flyers up around town, actual flyers, and a way for people to actually have access to the meetings that are happening. I only stumbled across these meetings because one late night I was scrolling through the channels on cable and the public access channel came up and there was a flyer that popped up through Amherst Media. That was completely accidental though. If I wasn't there at that moment, I would have no idea about these proceedings. And then another thing too would be who is actually a resident, because there are plenty of people who've lived in this town who can no longer afford to live in this town. They've moved to Holyoke or Pelham or Sunderland, Deerfield, anywhere. So how is the residency of this town being determined in terms of reparations? You could have been raised here and then have moved out of town because you can't afford to live here. So are those people too going to be incorporated, or is it kind of you made a choice for your best financial well-being just to be excluded from, or just to be excluded from, the whole process? That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And this is to you and to all of the folks who have spoken tonight. Please do stay engaged with us. This is exactly the kind of feedback that we are looking for and just so deeply appreciate. So thank you. And I see that Yvonne, and I think it was Yvonne, Alexis, and then Dr. Rhodes. Yvonne, okay. Why don't we go to Dr. Rhodes? Okay.
Milan, really thank you very much for your comments. One of this panel's greatest challenges is reaching out to the African American community. And not only reaching out, we can do that, but it's the response that we want. And we are right now in the process of structuring a survey to go out to the African American community as well as other stakeholders in the community to get their feedback in terms of some really important issues that we are faced with, that some of them have been mentioned tonight, that we really need to get the feedback from the community on. And so those who are now in the audience, if you have not registered on the portal, if you're an African American under Engage Amherst, I really would encourage you to do so and to encourage others who you might know. The other thing is, if people in the audience have any suggestions as to how we may better engage the community in our efforts, we really would like to hear from you.
Thanks, Dr. Rhodes. Alexis.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for saying those things. I think that just to speak to the performative piece, it's really hard to say. And I think that it's important for people to understand that we, as a body, we aren't a decision-making body. We don't get to make any sort of, we're a recommending body. We get to recommend to the people who make the decisions what they should do or how they should use the funds. So really it's and I don't want to sound cynical at all. I'm trying to sound more realist than anything. Is like it's really in the hands of our town councilors to make the decisions based off of our recommendations. It's our body only lives for so long, or maybe they'll extend the lifetime of our body, but we don't know. And so it's really up to us to continue the work and encourage our town councilors to continue this work and be very aggressive, for lack of a better word, about it. Because, you know, we're talking about, and it's difficult too, right? When we live in this capitalism, and you know, you say stuff like, you know, oh, well, what if you're an anti-capitalist, why don't you just get out? Like, what am I supposed to do? Live in a cave? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you get out of this? And we're talking about systems that have for so many hundreds of years, they thrive and function off of the exploitation of Black physical labor, off of Black intellectual labor, off of Black emotional labor. And so it's so hard to say how we can do that in the bubble that we have, especially knowing, you know, the powers that be. And this is not me, you know, pointing fingers at anybody, but like, this is just how it is. So I want to thank you for saying that. I guess what I'm trying to say is we're trying to be very earnest and genuine about it. But I think that it takes a little bit more than what we're doing right here in this body. And it's going to take more effort in terms of us building this community, and in terms of like everybody involved in this, and us really working together to make this a reality even outside of this. So, yeah.
Thank you, Alexis. Hala.
Yes, and thank you. Not to like belabor a point, but Milan, some of my friends call Massachusetts Mississippi because we are just as racist as the South, if not more. It just has a different flavor, looks different. There's gaslighting, and so thank you for naming that and bringing it to here. And I know the people I work with on this committee, we do not want to be performative, but we also need to be reminded not to be performative. And I think part of the biggest first step is that people in this area, we need to say, shoot. I really wanted to say an expletive, but we do engage in white supremacy ideology, oppressive practices, and racism. We are not like the freedom fighters come to the North. And that feels like a first step to say, how did we engage in, even like Harvard right now, not to give Harvard a lot of props, but they're saying, what theorists did we engage with even beyond when we disengaged from slavery that enhanced thinking Black people were other than? So just thank you, Milan. Thank you, Amherst, for listening. I'm not trying to call us out, but I will call us out because there's a lot of racism here. And I even have to analyze myself in what ways do I engage in and support white supremacy ideology. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Hala. Ms. Bridges, I thought I saw your hand.
I also want to thank Milan. His comments were right on the money. I think back of the racism and harm that I've had growing up in Amherst, and it really needs to stop. It really does. And his comments were right on the money. More people need to know. More people need to get involved with us. So thank you, Milan.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Ms. Bridges and Milan. And we have, so I'm looking at the time. I'd like to bring in, I think it's Jacqueline, into the audience. And then we have Kathleen, who is going to finish us out with a poem, a poetry reading, and then we're going to provide some contact information to the congressman, and also for how you can reach us and follow up with our work, the inclusion portal, and the survey that we hope to be releasing in the near future. Welcome back.
Thank you. I've been sitting here squirming because I've been so excited about hearing voices that echo my thoughts. And one of the things, I'm from Macon, Georgia. I was part of the civil rights movement in the South in the 60s. And when I came to Amherst, it was not until I came to Amherst that I thought I needed to admit myself to an asylum. So I went back home. I came back here. I came here as a doctoral student, and everybody was asking if I were happy that I'm up here away from the South. And I couldn't quite figure it out until I figured it out by going back home a few months after I came here so that I could admit myself to the asylum. And that it was there that I learned I was not out of touch with reality. Reality had decided it would squash me and convince me otherwise. When I came back here the second time, which was almost 20 years later, I found that was many of us, our survival depended upon our being complicit in the whole effort to maintain oppression. And all of the speakers afterwards, I was wondering as we were going along tonight, was my truth ever going to be echoed? And would we not be afraid any longer to speak? When I came back, I came to set up a respite, a haven for Black women. And I talked with other Black women who have been here for a long period of time. And they said, but I have white friends. And it was like going back to 1978 when I came here. It made me forgive me. It made me mindless. And as one who did her doctorate in psychological education, it made me crazy. And I couldn't understand, but just to survive, there's a certain complicity that has to occur in some of our heads. And when Milan spoke, he just summed up what the other speakers had said earlier. And we're not going to reach, when we were going to do something about elders in this community, and the responsibility was put on me to identify them. I don't know all Black folks in Amherst, and there must be a way to get the records. There has to be, but I was left with the responsibility of notifying. That doesn't make sense. The town, if it is committed, has to allocate the funds to be able to get in touch with these people. But I appreciate this tonight. I tell you, I go away flying to bed and feeling rejuvenated and revived and centered again, because the visibility is acknowledged. And we don't have to be silent. We don't have to tiptoe through the tulips. We have to be bold enough to speak. And to some extent, we have to be given permission. And that is where community is. When white people can accept the fact that we can't take care of everybody. There's an African proverb that says, beware of the naked man or woman who comes bringing you clothes. And it's so important in academic settings that we clothe everyone at one time, because it's less costly to do that when we have violated or stripped them in different ways. So we have to be all inclusive so that we can redeem the era of the greatest committer of those eras. And it doesn't feel good, and it doesn't resonate well. So something about it isn't right. Thank you so much for this evening. and thank Kathleen, because I would not have known about it if I had not run into Kathleen yesterday. And she made it a point to get the word to me because my old email address wasn't working. And if we do one at a time, in the next 400 years, we might have been able to have Amherst redeem itself.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Thank you for being here. I'm so glad that you ran into Kathleen. And really, really appreciate your comments. I do see Ms. Bridges' hand is raised. It may have been from the last time. Okay, just checking in. Okay, we have it.
Does anybody else hear that noise or is it just me?
I do hear that noise. I don't hear it anymore. I did hear it. Do you still hear it? Okay. Good. Okay. So it looks like we have Amilcar Shabazz Jr. Welcome.
Hi guys.
See you.
I almost lost heart to say anything. Hearing from others, it helped. Actually, I resonate with Carly Tardikov saying that we need to hear from people who have been affected and where the damage is. I really think that one of the things that we're facing is disinformation. I think, and misinformation. I think that people will, you know, try to simplify the history and and twist people's words. Um, and the best thing we can do is just provide more truth and more information about who really needs the help, and what a great thing this is. In actuality, um, I'm really looking forward to suggestions that can come from here, um, and learning about you know how we're going to find those things out. um, I think it's hard uh, to basically do something that a lot of countries have no experience doing. um, it takes a lot of creativity and a lot of um, morality, I think, um, to even think something like this is possible. um, I think that uh, we are we're listening to each other, and we're the type of people that will listen. But as the second in the country to really consider this as a worthwhile proposition, you're facing a lot of people that would like to just be told no because they've seen the history operate. And um, even people that could use the help would say no, perhaps, because they think this will cause problems, and it probably will cause problems, because a lot of you know people who have resentment will be shown to be opaque in their judgment of this type of um, you know activity. um, and I think all we can do is just show the facts and the truth about the history. And people will, it'll give them something to be forgiven about. Um, they don't have to be the one-dimensional kind of racists that we fear them to be. Um, there can be definitely reparations and then also forgiveness for this kind of history, and it really hasn't been done before for other kind of underclass people in other countries. Um, this kind of thing is reminiscent of social caste, and um, there's nothing that they can say to take away from the voices that need to be heard about this, because it's I think it's obvious, but maybe that's my bias. um, but yep.
Thank you so much, Milkar. Thank you for joining us. Really nice to see you. Okay, it looks like we have Ms. Pat coming in.
Can people hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Okay, I want to be as attendance. Okay. So first of all, thank you to the AHRA committee members for your time. I really appreciate it. Everybody that came out tonight, including our elected officials. I wasn't sure if I wanted to speak tonight, but I decided to. So couple feedback. I appreciate that our town wants to set up reparation fund. However, given that our town is well resourced, I am kind of frustrated that our town only dedicated $2 million for 10 years, when in fact, we had a lot of free cash money that could have gone to reparation fund. We're talking about supporting big library for $16 million, and our town doesn't have enough funds right away for Black residents in this town. 10 years. Some of the Black folks in this town will even pass away. Some of the folks who are, working hard to get this happen may not even be alive. So my point is, our town just wants to check off the box. Okay, that's what they did. Check off the box. You want reparation? We'll give you $2 million for 10 years. Shut up. Move on. Let's do something else. Another issue I want to bring up is, as most of you know, I ran a business in town. I had a restaurant. And with some Black business owners, and I'm speaking for myself, who experienced structural barriers, racism in our town, with the Chamber of Commerce, with the bid, renting and things like that, and not having a voice in decision making that affects business people. A group of Black-owned business in 2016, we gathered together and started a group. And we called ourselves Black Business Association. What is striking about my group is that we experience similar discrimination. We met monthly, and during pandemic, we stopped meeting and still get connected, and we started again. The federal government gave Town of Amherst $12 million. I want people to just think about that. Let it sink in. out of $12 million, we have about maybe 2 million left. But none of that money, a dime, has gone to members of my group. That is more than 20 businesses in our town. And when I said businesses, it does not really necessarily mean you're renting from landlords, okay? And my group members have not received a dime from this money. And we've called upon our town officials to engage our group. The AHRA fund, the stimulus money is not trickling down to the most impacted in our town. And yet we parade ourselves as liberal town. What do you want? We gave you reparation. We created CREST program for you. We created DEI for you. But watch what is happening, okay? July 5th, we had incident. The youth and their families are demanding compensation. The town officials just kept mute. They don't want to do anything. If this has happened to majority white, compensation would have been settled because they have the economic power to retain attorney and sue the town. Okay, so we're talking about harm done in the past. Harm is still happening up till today. If you're a Black person in Amherst or America, I don't care who you are, you experience racism. And when you speak up, you get targeted. You get called names, and I don't care. People, you guys are asking, why don't we have people tonight, listening session? Why do we need brother white residents to be here tonight? I get that we invited our congressman and our state representative. I get that. Black people would like to speak their mind and not fear that repercussion on them. Okay. Many Black people, they are aware of this reparation, but people don't have faith in our town officials based on our past history. And I can go on, but I thank you guys for doing this. And I hope you guys are getting compensated for your time because our town is resourced. And we need to change the systems that is keeping people of color in this town, especially Black people, backwards. We need to change it. We cannot stand for status quo anymore. Our town needs to provide childcare stipend for folks that serve on committees. I think our town needs to pay stipend for anyone serving on town boards because we have the resources. You can tell a town's priority based on their budget. And you can hear racist comments, but you know, it's not said like that. It's like, we can afford it. We have budgetary constraints, so we can't get more staffing for CREST. We don't have money for reparation right away. They will come up with budgetary constraints. But when it comes to Jones Library, they'll find federal funds to get money. That will be vote to increase the amount. And I just want to stop. But thank you. I appreciate you all doing this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pat. Thank you for being here and for your comments. And so I'm aware of the time. We do have one more hand raised, and then we have Dr. Shabazz and Yvonne, who may also have some comments. We've brought in Emmanuel Felton, and we're going to take that comment and then other comments from the assembly, and then we will bring Kathleen back. In fact, we can bring Kathleen in now so that when this comment is completed, we can move into the poetry reading that we have coming from Kathleen. Kathleen, you may have to raise your hand in order to be brought in, so Oh, there you are. Okay, welcome.
It's my go.
It's your go. Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to
Good to see you
properly
again.
introduce myself. I am Emmanuel Felton. The race and ethnicity reporter at the Washington Post. I feel like some of my, you've spoken to some of the work I've done recently. The Providence story about half the white residents came from my reporting, and I'm trying to stay in touch with the communities across the country that are trying to really do this work. And I think Amherst is super interesting. I mean, it's a town it's a fascinating history, and I think it's a place that I want to write about. So I just wanted to say, I'm here. I would love to talk to folks if you're interested. I'm just going to say it. My cell is 504-481-9169. And my email address is Emmanuel, EMMANUEL .Felton, F as in Frank, ELTON @washpost.com. And thanks so much for having me. It's been a really interesting conversation tonight.
Thank you. And I'll make sure, because we've been in touch already once or twice, I'll make sure to get your contact information out again to everybody. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right. So Dr. Shabazz texted me and made an excellent suggestion that any assembly member that would like to make closing comments here, this is the time that we can do that. And then Kathleen, who we can see now and not just a picture, will close us up with a poem. So if there are, I see Yvonne's hands up, so I'm going to go right to you, Yvonne.
I just wanted to comment on Pat's to kind of fill in and comment on some of what Pat brought up, which is the whole idea of allies. And I do believe that we need public forums like this where everyone is invited. But I also do agree that if there's at some point, and I'm hope that I understood what Pat was saying, that there should be possibly some sessions that are closed where African Americans might feel more comfortable being able to share personal experiences. And we did address that previously in our committee meetings, that there might be a way for us to be able to get at some of those really important stories that in this public forum, there might be folks who are not as comfortable sharing those things across the board in a large setting like this. So I will say that there has been conversation about that to answer Pat's concern that yes, there hopefully within the time frame that there is time to be able to offer that kind of space for BIPOC folks to be able to really share their experiences.
Excellent. Thank you, Yvonne. And maybe Kathleen can mention this again, but the Black Assembly of Amherst, Massachusetts, which some folks here on this assembly are also on this sort of organizing committee of, we can make sure that that information is also getting out there for folks. And those, I believe, Hala, those are open to all Black and African heritage residents in Amherst? Okay. Perfect. So are there any other closing comments from assembly members at this time? Yes, Dr. Rhodes. And you can just go, everyone can just.
This has been really good. Obviously some of the comments that have been made have to be put through one's filter in terms of how the information is being received or how that information is being spread, and also in terms of as an old saying goes, no matter how thin the pancake, there are always two sides. And I think that it is really incumbent upon all of us to know that there are two sides to everything that anyone says, and that information, data, and investigation is something that is incumbent upon all of us to do, and that what one says or what another person says is just that, is what they said, and that we can look at that as a person who is informed and take that information in and take that information in and then utilize that information to make informed decisions after we have gone through an investigative process on our own. Knowledge is something that is acquired through effort and through due diligence in terms of what is said. Otherwise, if we only go on what is said by one person, we are then left to the mercy of multiple kinds of sayings that we then have to decipher. What I guess I'm wanting to say is that, look, we have heard a lot today, and I really would like to hear a lot more. And we have important decisions to make, and we have an expiration date, and we need to again hear back from the African American community as well as all the stakeholders. And I want to be very clear. We are a part of a community. We are a part of a community. You know, we have an African American community. We have an African American community as a part of the Amherst community. The Amherst community, you know, we have gone out and we have money being set aside for reparations, and that when we spend money from that account, it has to be a 2/3 majority of the town council. So it's really important that we engage not only the African Americans in this town, but also others. And that's why when we have this survey, it's not only important, it's very important to hear from the African Americans in terms of what we're intending to do or how we're going to go about it. But it's really also important to hear from others in the community who elect the representatives who are on the town council.
Thanks, Dr. Rhodes. Alexis?
I'm going to be super brief. I want to thank everybody for coming out and for all the comments. I'm going to step away so that I can end the broadcast, but I truly thank everybody for their participation, and I look forward to engaging more of these dialogues with you also. Thank you.
Thank you. And Alexis, before you step away, just a huge thank you to Amherst Media. Thank you so much. Not only for tonight, but for everything that you do for the community. And please pass that on to the rest of the folks there. All right. Any other comments that any members would like to make before Kathleen reads the poem?
Kathleen's really going to close us out? Okay.
No, we can certainly, I think if there are still more comments from members, we should hear them, and then
I'll wait for Kathleen. I want to feel the power.
I think you will. All right, Kathleen, I'm even going to pin you. So just to me, which means we can really see you now. Please. Thank you.
Okay. I just want to, before I read this poem, I just want to let people know, whenever I am out in the public, I stop Black people wherever I am. In the grocery stores, on the street, at the bus stop, in the post office, every single place I see a Black face, I ask, are you a resident of Amherst? Do you have an email address you check regularly? My name is Kathleen Anderson. I'm working with the town about a reparations proposal, and I'd like to communicate with you further. I would like you to add you to a list of Black residents of Amherst. Every single place I go, my daughter, when she's with me, gets a little embarrassed. Mom, why are you looking at those people like that? everywhere I go. Every store, every building, everywhere. And so I say that because you can do that too if you aren't already doing that. Okay, this poem is titled Reparations Now, Reparations Tomorrow, Reparations Forever. It is by Ashley M. Jones. She is the Poet Laureate of Alabama. A case for reparations. When, Governor, can we enjoy the full richness of the great American dream? My grandmother was a sharecropper. My grandfather beat his Black wife and Black children. My uncle was arrested for a crime he didn't commit. In America, even the shadows of Black people are Black enough to hide all innocence. Some nights I dream of being killed like Emmett Till or Trayvon Martin or Sandra Bland, or you insert a name of a Black person here. Some nights I insert my name there. Is that the American dream? Governor, president, mayor, boss man, woman with a cell phone or a police badge or a bank account, and the skin tender enough to make murder legal. When will you be tired of the taste of Black blood? Sometimes I'm singing a song and you make that feel like death. Sometimes I'm dancing a dance and you make that feel like shame. Sometimes I'm sitting on my porch just trying to eat a damn melon and you make that feel like I'm selling my Black soul. My parents told me I could be anything, even God. That's the least I'm owed. I know I'm worth heaven, yes, but also worth life on earth. My mother told us we were pretty enough to be dolls, pretty enough to be praised in the book of Barbie. That's the least I'm owed. A face, skin, hair so obviously, inherently, objectively America to hug and love and look at with the eyes of dreams.
What if that's one of her pieces?
No.
What? You think all I want is money? What? You think money can ever repay what you stole? Give me land. Give me all the blood you ripped out of the backs, our veins. Give me every snapped neck and the noose you wove to hoist the body up. Give me the screams you silenced in so many dark and lustful rooms. Give me the songs you said were yours, but you know came from our lips first. Give me back Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X and Medgar Evers. Give me back the beauty of my hair, the swell of my hips, the big of my lips. Give me back the whole Atlantic Ocean. Give me a never-ending blue and a mule. Ashley M. Jones.
All right.
Thank you, Kathleen. And I am going to turn it over officially to Dr. Shabazz to close us out. I just want to say thank you to everyone who was here tonight. And we did have our Engage Amherst link up previously, so that's engageamherst.org/AHRA. And I think I read out the cell phone of the congressman. He does have an office in Northampton. And I think that all of our assembly members, although we don't have our email addresses anywhere, I know are eager to hear from folks. So please do reach out. Please stay engaged. And thank you. And thanks to all of the assembly and to Pamela and to Jennifer and to all of the counselors who came tonight. It really, really means so much, and to all of the community. So Dr. Shabazz, please.
Thank you. I want to reiterate that about this being an ongoing kind of process of collecting feedback, of collecting what your questions are, what your concerns are, what your ideas are. Some are people felt good to air here. We thank you for that. Some can air them in other formats. My own email is shabazz@umass.edu. Feel free to send something there. I will share with the rest of the AHRA as you direct. The other thing that my son raised, I want to particularly take to heart, and that's the question of disinformation and truth telling. We must at every point in this process be very firmly anchored in the truth and telling the truth. You know, as soon as we were assembled as the AHRA, within the next month, October of our first year in existence, we came out with recommendations relative to the idea of funding. Was there going to be any funds behind this? Because if not, if there wasn't anything for restitution, compensation, anything involved, then we would just be about some symbolic acknowledgement. And we wanted to know if we were on firmer ground than that. And that's where we made recommendations. The one about, we initially started with an idea of earmarking the tax revenue from the dispensaries, recreational dispensary tax revenue. Okay, compromises happened within that process, and it came out instead as what was mentioned tonight, trying to capture that money's not directly, but modeled on it and building up to 2 million. If it takes 10 years to get there, if it takes 2 years to get there, but whatever the case may be, it's not quite as was presented. And let's be clear, this was just trying to capture one funding stream that there was conversation about, particularly from Alyssa Brewer, who had been on the select board and had been on the early part of the council before these revenues came up, raised the point that there had not been a discussion in the town, in the new town council, about that particular revenue. And with all of, again, my area of harm that I opened with was on criminal punishment. With all of the disparities, all of the over prosecution, over sentencing, and over policing of Black people, particularly around marijuana use, there was a sense that it would be only ethically and morally right to try and take those funds and reserve those funds in some reparative way toward that community that had been harmed by the way laws had been prosecuted around marijuana consumption when it was fully illegal, back when it was illegal on the local level. So that is just part We have more that we have recommended already, and there is more that can be in our final recommendations. So please don't leave with the sense that this 2 million is all it is all that we are recommending, and is all that our town will do. That is not the case. That is not certainly what I hope will be the end product, but rather that is just one funding stream that marked a particular position that was taken from our council to at least do that much and to commit to that much. But we have looked at Community Preservation Act, for example, our community preservation dollars that are funded out of our property taxes to 3%. And, you know, those concern issues of historic preservation, open space, community housing, recreation. We are inviting feedback and vetting ideas that might fall under that rubric that we can recommend in our final report be taken up and be looked upon within the work of the Community Preservation Act Committee and Town Council. So again, I just want to stress that the 2 million was not an endpoint to the financial support that this town is prepared to put behind reparative justice work. That was just one moment that we have started with to show where we are. But I think there will be more in our final recommendations. I know we have already discussed other streams, and I say hold on to our final report to see where we really are on that particular piece. But by all means, keep the conversation going, keep the feedback going to us, and we will continue to work hard to get a report produced that really meets the needs of this town. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shabazz. And just checking one last time with Hala and Dr. Rhodes and Yvonne, if there are any further comments, and also wanted to check in with Pamela and Jennifer to see if I've missed anything in terms of closing the meeting. Please do let me know.
No, not that I'm aware of. Maybe just announce the time.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, for being here. Thanks again to Pamela and Jennifer, and to all. So have a very nice evening. It's 9:04 p.m. and we hope to see you soon. Okay, bye-bye.